monster.
I'm your number one fan.
Now clear your minds. Notice what scares you. It has from the very beginning.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
It's been informed that zombies have entered the building. They're at the door. They're coming in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Midnight Monster Corner podcast. I'm your host, as always, Corey, and alongside me is my good pal, Frosty. What's going on, Daniel?
Tom Sizemore's goat.
Yeah. And always, the one and only Tony Arroyo. What's going on, man?
What's up, brothers? How you doing?
Doing good, doing well. How about you guys? You guys been doing good?
Yeah, man. We're doing good.
Definitely. Doing slightly worse than I was earlier, having finished Slithus.
That's funny. I'm doing slightly better because I watched Slithus, so.
Well, it's
made me
good
feel
bad. Yeah, it's a good and bad feeling. You know, like It's funny because right after I watched it or reviewed it, and I saw that Moods had given it a 3.5 stars, and he had put in there in his rating 7 out of 10. I was like, what? And then in parentheses beside it, he's like, it's so bad, but I love it. So
I think I gave it a 3. So.
Must be one of those like cult classic creature features that are just so bad you can't help but love them, you know?
It's weird because it technically should be, but I don't ever really hear anybody talk about it. So it's really bizarre. It's probably lumped into that kind of subcategory. But not a lot of people talk about it because not a lot of people have seen it. So I implore people to go check it out.
Yeah, I think that when you talked about it last week, that was the first time I had actually ever really heard of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, even hearing both of you guys talk about it makes me want to go see it. And you guys said it's on Tubi, right?
It's on Tubi.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna definitely check that one out.
Yeah, we'll be championing Tubi on this show for real because you had mentioned it, Tony. I've been watching nothing but Tubi. Like I've been knocking out all of their horror and martial arts movies. And somebody in one of the movie collecting groups I was in today had posted Tubi, and they were like, "Hey guys, y'all need to check Tubi out. It's the real deal." And they were talking about how other streaming services should be embarrassed because Tubi just has such a catalog of horror. It's not all good, but it's also not all bad. Like they got some good stuff on there. So I'd say probably better than Hulu's. Hulu's got some mainstream stuff, newer stuff like Pet Sematary or the new Child's Play or newer Child's Play. But like they also have a lot of shit movies on Hulu, like that you have to kind of siphon through. Whereas Tubi, they have such a broad, selection that so definitely good stuff. So that's our shameless Tubi plug of the show.
Gotta get it in there.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
So before we get started on this episode and everything, probably want to go into some housekeeping. Daniel, you want to take that away?
Most definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Midnight Monster Corner podcast. We greatly appreciate you listening. Shout out to everyone who's been following us on Facebook and Twitter and even YouTube. You guys rock. We greatly appreciate your continued support. If you're a new listener listening right now, just a reminder, you can find us on YouTube. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, leave a comment. That would be awesome. You can find us on Twitter at monster_corner. We've been posting a lot more stuff in there lately. So let's say you use Twitter more than Facebook, follow us there. That'd be awesome. We do a lot of our main posting, though, in our Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com, go to the search bar, type in the Midnight Monster Corner podcast. It is a closed group, but ask nicely. We will let you in. At least I'm a nice guy. Tony might make you sit down and watch a marathon of Slithus.
Yeah. Just like Slithus.
There's no sequels. It's just Slithus over and over again.
Over and over again. That's how they torture people in China, I think.
That's right.
It's
They all hold their eyes over that.
They do. It's like Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, that's right.
So good.
Yeah, other than that, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, anywhere you can listen to podcasts, be sure to follow us there and give us a like. We've seen some growth just on Podbean. Our analytics on there has been showing some growth. We've had some new listeners, including a listener from Japan, so that's kind of cool. So we thank everyone, for checking us out and giving us the time. So we're hopefully, going to be putting out more content. Corey, you're back on the ball doing reviews again. That's inspired me. I want to start doing some reviews, maybe to get Tony in on the rotation. So that way we can, move forward and put out more content for you guys. And, so that would be awesome. But, yeah, I think that's housekeeping. That being said, let's jump into this. What movie are we talking about today, Corey?
We are talking about the Relic from 1997. Now, before we get into this film and everything, I just want to let everyone know that if you haven't been listening, and this is your first episode, we do a month by month where we do almost basically themes, where we'll pick 2 films of our choosing to do the first 2 weeks of the month, and in which this is the first week of the month, and we chose The Relic. We are doing creature features. But yeah, so The Relic from 1997. But yeah, right off the rip, what do you guys think?
Well, go ahead, Tony.
No, I was going to say the first thing, and I don't want to jump. This isn't really jumping too far into it, but the first thing that you just zone in on is the setting. It's set in, like, the majority of this movie is set in a museum, which, to have a creature running amok in a museum is kind of unheard of. You don't really see that much in horror films. I mean, not any that I've seen. So really, it's kind of unique, and it's kind of it's just cool because I love that they have the the underground tunnels, and like I said, I know we're jumping into a little bit, but we're doing a discussion. Spoilers ahead. If no one's seen The Relic, I implore you, check it out. But there's a heavy emphasis on, and I think this was the director's, from what I understand, the director's decision is to make the cinematography really dark. And this movie is very dark.
Very dark, yeah.
Sometimes it's really hard to see what's going on, and it's the color palette's kind of muted, and it's I don't know. There's a lot of dark, shadowy scenes and stuff like that. But I think technically, on a technical aspect, especially when you're showing the creature, it's a practical creature for the majority. I think the scenes where the creature's actually running or moving and stuff like that, they actually use CGI, which for the time I thought it was going to be awful. It's actually really not that bad. I was kind of surprised by the CGI because I've seen movies from this era, like from the early 90s to the late 90s. CGI is rough, dude.
Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Yeah, this came out around the same time. So
yeah, this was January 97. So it was, it would have been around that time.
What about exactly?
The CGI in that movie was terrible.
It's awful.
So,
I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about Spawn too. Spawn had terrible CGI in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those are the 2 I usually think of when I think of like really bad, like late 90s CGI. But in this movie,
every time a clown farts, he gets his wings. Twins.
I was really surprised with how it looked. But I think the director was kind of going for like a dark, moody kind of vibe with the atmosphere, and it was a choice that he made. He stuck by his choice. A lot of people have condemned him for this choice because they didn't agree with it, because they say it's a hard movie to watch because a lot of the scenes are so dark. You can't really see what's going on, and I don't want to hound the movie for doing that, because I actually thought, it was kind of beneficial for them to do that. But I could see people's argument where they say, "Oh, it's hard to tell what's going on. I can't really see certain things that are happening. I get lost in, the plot and stuff because I don't know what's happening. I can't see it 100%."
Yeah. I can see that. I kind of have a theory too as to why it was so dark. I feel like they were able to, if they kept it so dark, they were able to make the CGI pop.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like,
any like flaws in the creature effects or the creature design wouldn't have been shown because it would have been so dark, or they would have darkened.
Well,
right.
Well, you also got to think this is the late 90s. This is where CGI really first started making its scene. I mean, it did like in the late, I would say the late 80s, they started using a little bit of CGI, and maybe even the early 90s, but this is when CGI was really starting to make it, because they were doing CGI a lot more at this time than they were practical effects.
Yeah.
And in some scenes it worked quite well. In some scenes I didn't care for it. I thought that they could have done better with practical effects. And we'll get into that later on, But yeah, I liked some of the CGI, and some of it was garbage to me.
The fire scene was definitely garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could talk about that real quick. So, like, yeah, the fire scene, definitely, where he's running, I didn't care for that.
That looked bad.
When the tongue comes out and licks her, I mean, just use a prosthetic tongue right there. Why not? It just didn't work for me.
The old forked tongue trick.
Yeah.
Seen 100 times. So can we talk about how cool the IMDb description is on this movie? A homicide detective and an anthropologist try to destroy a South American lizard-like god who's on a people-eating rampage at a Chicago museum. Christ, that's metal.
Yeah, it really is. Which we can also talk. I mean, I want to just throw out there, and we talked about a little pregame, but Tom Sizemore is fucking awesome. Like I really think he's just super underrated. I love him in everything I ever see him in. My little gripe is I wish I would have seen more of him in the movie, because there's a certain chunk of the movie where you don't really see him much, and I'm like, I'd rather see his character than just about any other character, really, because I mean, well, except for our main protagonist, the girl in the museum. I can't remember her name, but
Dr. Margot Green.
That's it, Margot. Yes, because she has played that character in a couple of movies. So, yeah, her character is pretty cool. I like what they do with her, especially toward the end, which we can get into that when we get there. But I like Tom. So I like the fact that he's and I picked up. Well, I mean, it's not like I picked up on it, because when we first decided to do the Relic, like we decided on doing that one, I thought I have seen it before, but it turns out I actually saw the movie Mimic, not the Relic.
Oh, okay.
So this was a first time watch for me. I've never seen it before, because I got it confused with Mimic, because it came out around the same time, had to deal with creature and like dark tunnels and stuff like that. So I just, for some reason, flipped the movies in my mind. I thought I saw the Relic and I didn't see Mimic. But then going back and looking at the plot of Mimic, I was like, that's the movie I saw when it came out. So this was actually a first time watch for me. So I like the fact that his character, Tom Sizemore's character, was very superstitious. Or some things where he points it out, like, oh, don't do that. That's bad luck. I hate cat scares. I hate cat jump scares. They had a cat jump scare in this movie.
They had a cat, fucking cat. As soon as that scene popped up, I thought of you. I was like, Cody's gonna fuck it.
It's one of those cliches in horror films that I just can't stand. I'm especially in that. Why is a cat on the boat anyway? And why is it? It just doesn't make any sense. It's basically there just
chased a rat. He chased a rat.
Yeah, I thought it was so stupid. But I have a history with cat jump scares. I can't stand them. So But he said, you know, when the cat jumped out, the guy's like, "Oh shit, it was a cat." He's like, "Well, is it a black cat?" He's like, what?" He's like, "You know, that's bad luck."
Bad luck,
you
yeah.
know, things like that. His character.
Yeah.
The funniest thing though was the ongoing joke with him getting a divorce and his wife getting
Custody of the dog.
that
He's
shit
like,
had me
he's like, who gets custody of a fucking dog?
That was funny. That was funny, and they kind of
guess-
added to the chemistry between him and the Margot Green, because like you could see how he was very standoffish from her, kind of sarcastic, you know, and butting heads with her because he's going through divorce. So like, you know, I was watching it with my wife. I was like, yeah, he probably doesn't want to talk to her because maybe she reminds him of his wife, and he's like, you know,
Little backstory there.
right.
Could-
That's kind of what I thought anyway. Also, I thought the scene was funny when she just casually walks into the bathroom and sees body parts everywhere and freaks out.
That's
was like-
another thing.
It's like that wouldn't have happened because they would have had it roped off. Like she wouldn't have.
Yeah,
really
they would have ripped off. for
And then
sure.
she gets mad at him for not closing the door. I was like, "Bitch, it's a crime scene. You know it's a crime scene. There's
I like
cops."
how I like how later on in like when he goes to interrogate her, like investigate her a little bit, and he was like, "I just want to apologize that you saw that back there."
That's where. So that's the thing. I didn't expect that. There's moments of like comedy in this that I just didn't expect. I didn't know they were going to go that route. I thought it was going to be a straightforward monster movie with no comedy whatsoever. But there's really, really funny moments in this movie, and I did not expect that at all. I thought this was going to be a completely straightforward monster movie. I did not expect it at all, and it was actually quite surprising and kind of refreshing. I actually like that. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the contrast between the dark and atmospheric stuff with the little subtle comedy and stuff like that, it just worked for me. I thought it was perfectly done, like not too overboard, not too over the top, just enough, sprinkled throughout the movie, because it wasn't like the first half of the movie was bogged down with a lot of comedy and then they kind of went straight forward with the climax. No, it was pretty much spread throughout the movie, throughout the entire runtime. So I thought that was pretty smart, to keep it refreshing, keep your audience engaged just along with the monster. So I have to give them kudos for that. That was pretty smart on their part. So
yeah, I will say that they did a good job of like keeping it suspenseful too, because you never really knew where the monster was going to be. Like it moved fast and it could navigate that museum really well. And I mean, you find out later, maybe I guess just jump right into it. They find out the monster is an amalgamation of like different species, including human. One of those humans being the archaeologist in the beginning,
Did you guys tie that in? Did you guys like feel that was going to happen?
I did. When they said it had human DNA in it, I looked at Kim and I was like, I bet it's John Whitney, that archaeologist.
Well, I
started
getting the feeling that this creature was a mixed breed of certain things by the time they first showed like the back of it laying in the tunnel, and it was like breathing heavy, because at one point it sounded like a dog whimpering as well, and I was like, I bet you this is like a creature with multiple DNA.
A chimera, if you will.
Yes.
Really,
they call
it's
it.
like a hodgepodge creature. It's a lot of different aspects of different animals and stuff mixed into one.
It's just a mutt creature.
It really is. But the creature looks fucking awesome. The practical effects look like his face is so detailed, and I love that, because that was the big thing for me watching this for the first time. I was like, I couldn't wait for the build-up of the reveal to see what the creature looked like, because I didn't want to spoil it by looking up any images from the movie or anything like that. I wanted to be completely surprised when you actually saw the creature for the first time. And I did not expect it to look like that.
I didn't expect it to be so big.
It's massive.
Like,
it's
thing when it stood up on his hind legs, I was like, these guys are in trouble.
Yeah, it genuinely is frightening, that creature. It looks frightening. I mean, the fact that it runs and it moves as fast as it does, it's terrifying. But the fact, and this is the one thing I didn't get, how it was able to slowly get around the museum without people noticing it too. Because there's a scene, and I know it's going to get brought up, so I guess I'll be the one that brings it. There's a scene where there's 2 security guards, and one of the security guards leaves, and the other security guard's fine, but when he comes back in there, the security guard's head's completely off, but he's still sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
He hasn't moved, still sitting in the chair, and the guy does the thing like, "Hey, dude, you all right?" And he shakes him, and nope, the head falls off. How the fuck did that happen? Like,
well,
really?
he was literally like in the next room over.
He was exactly.
Yeah, he
So
literally just went into the next doorway over.
Right. So it's like, you gotta kind of throw that aside and like, whatever. It's a fucking creature feature, whatever. Like, don't take it so seriously. But come on.
In that scene, I really love the fact that he goes, "Hey, make sure you don't lock the door behind me. Don't lock me out this time." It's like, well, that guy's gonna be dead.
Yeah. You know
it. Take a little page out of Randy from Scream, right there.
Fucking Randy.
Had to bring him up.
You have to bring him up. Rest in peace, Randy. Love you.
The true goat.
You know what? Now I got to you.
Thinking about it, Tom Sizemore, he's been in he was in a creature feature that a while back. He was in one that I just randomly bought, and I think actually I bought it at a convention. Bottom Feeders.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was in Saving Private Ryan too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in Heat. He was in Heat too. Yeah, dude, have you watched that?
Bottom Feeders?
Yeah.
Long time ago.
You remember?
I might rewatch it.
Okay. I was gonna say,
almost similar concept. Basically, a scientist locks himself in a basement with creatures that he created. Turns out they're dog-like creatures. Just yeah, similar.
It's got Tom Sizemore in it. I'd check it out just because he's.
You know what? I really love the dialogue in a certain scene, the one where he's talking to the mayor on the phone, and he's like talking about shutting down the Jubilee or whatever the fuck it's called, the gala, I think they call it, or something. Yeah. And he's like, my wife's been really looking forward to this. She even bought a brand new dress, and she's planning on wearing it. And he was like, just make sure that you have enough cops there or something. He says something else, and then he's like, you better watch your mouth there. And he was like, I'll tell you what, you could fire me on Monday.
Yeah.
I love that.
Not having any of his shit. He's like, listen, dude, there's some shit going on, and I don't care if you fire me next Monday, whatever. I'm just letting you know some shit's going on. I'm gonna have cops there. There's gonna be a lot of cops there for your safety, for everybody's safety. Yeah. But I just love the fact, like, he was telling him about that. He was telling him about his wife, and he's just going on and on about his wife. He's like, she bought a new dress. She's got her cleavage pulled up. Have you ever seen my wife's cleavage?
He's like, well, you're the first out of all of Chicago.
Damn.
That was great.
Loved it. Like I said, nice little touch of comedy. I did not expect that at all. And another thing I didn't expect was like the gore set pieces of like lopped off heads, decapitated heads. That scene where they're in the bowels of the boat, I think that's the correct term. But underneath it is like this giant fucking pool body parts and everything like that. Like, oh shit, that looked gnarly, man. The practical were killer. Like, they were really, really good. I know Stan Winston had something to do with the creature design. I don't know who did the practical effects as far as, body parts and everything like that. But whoever did, man, bravo, good job. That shit looked great.
Yeah.
The scene we're talking about, the security guard. He's actually the first one killed in the museum, and he's in the bathroom, chilling, just hanging out, and all of a sudden this practical rubber arm just comes out, grabs him, and the creature just fucking annihilates him. And
it does.
we learn that the creature actually it eats the brain, and there's actually his brain like sitting there on the floor. So it's really like, wow, you just really don't see that too often. It's just a brain sitting on the fucking floor. And
It's a loose brain, chilling.
Mm-hmm.
It's great film. I mean, and then they go into a spiel about why, they find out why the creature actually eats the brains, and it's like a hormone deficiency, and once it eats the brain, like it develops and it grows. And I thought the backstory to the creature, we'll later find out, is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
They really get into a lot of like details, and I like the name of the creature too. I think it's called
Kogatha or Kothaga?
Kothaga or something, yeah.
It sounds like something out of like H.P. Lovecraft, dude. Like,
yeah.
There
It's
might
funny
be some
because
love there.
I don't know if he did. Okay, so Stan Winston did effects on Predator, and this creature definitely looked like a big predator on 4 legs with tusk.
the whole time I was watching that, whenever his mouth would open up and the teeth would be exposed and everything, and those beetle pinchers,
Mandibles.
Dude, I instantly was like, dude, that looks like the fucking Predator's mouth almost. It was really uncanny. And then the color, like the way that the eyes were and everything, too, kind of reminded me of the Predator's eyes. I was kind of like, wow. And then when you guys told me who did the practical or the practical effects and stuff, I was like, oh, okay, well that makes a lot of sense because it looked like that to me.
Yeah. So Stan Winston did work on Parasite, Manimal, Terminator, Invaders from Mars. He was actually the designer and creator of the Invaders. He did effects in Aliens, Predator 2, Terminator 2, Jurassic Park. So he worked on a lot of cool shit. Lake Placid.
Yeah, he's legendary, man.
Wow.
But I think the cool thing about the creature design, and I think the thing that stands out with the creature design is the mandibles. Like, those are fucking cool. If it didn't have the mandibles, I would think it'd be like, it's just an average kind of, creature. But those add so much to the character of the creature and make it more terrifying because it can actually latch onto somebody. And we see this too, where he latches onto a body with the mandibles and just rips the dude's head off, and it's fucking sick, dude. It really looks. I enjoy the hell of it. I'm surprised they kind of didn't shy away from the gore. Like the gore is plentiful in this. I was really surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, I was worried that they're gonna have a lot of cutaway stuff, but I think they did a good job.
Yeah.
So.
And it comes down to me just prejudging a film because it came out. I didn't think about, I was like, in the early 90s, late 90s, I thought they're going to shy away from this. They're going to make it more of a, like a watered down creature feature, whatever. But no, not this movie, man. It really surprised me. I was really surprised with anything else of what they were able to do and get away with.
Yeah, like the scene where they're pulling the they drop down the what you call it, the sunroof. And the SWAT team's rappelling down, and that one guy, like, he rappels down like he's a badass, and he just immediately he falls right on top of the monster and just instantly dies. And then the second guy sees him, and he's like, pull me up. As he's trying to get pulled up, like, top half of his body gets pulled up, and the bottom half was obviously got ripped apart. So that part was pretty cool.
The first time I saw that whole scene where you see the creature, moving around in that museum, instantly in that whole scene, I was sitting there going, I'm waiting for Ron Perlman to walk through. Like, where's Hellboy?
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if this didn't have, if Hellboy, that scene where he was fighting that monster, and it is a museum, correct? Yeah, he's fighting the monster in the museum in Hellboy. I'm kind of wondering if that was the maybe kind of a takeaway right there from this film.
There's like a Kevin Bacon, like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon going on, because I know Guillermo del Toro directed Hellboy, and he had a movie come out at the same time, which the movie we were talking about. When I got confused, I thought this was that. Mimic, he directed that too, and it's just kind of like, it's weird how in filmmaking in Hollywood and stuff like that, they kind of like, it's almost like history doesn't really. It's hard to say it really repeats itself, but they take the influences around the same time, and then they'll go back and a couple years later and you'll see it again. And it's pretty cool when that happens, and that's just another example.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like they all know like what's relevant for its time and all, you know, and it all comes out like at the same time, and it's almost like they're borrowing each other's homework too.
Yeah.
In a way.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, you know.
The one thing I didn't get though, I didn't get the kids part. Like when the kids were in the, I didn't understand why they wanted to stay. Maybe I missed something, but I didn't understand why they were trying to stay at the museum overnight. There's two kids there's like field trips going on during the day, and these two kids are like, oh, we're going to stay in the museum for whatever reason I didn't understand. And they ended up staying in the museum, and that's when the security guard got killed. They had like it wasn't really a confrontation with the monster, but the monster kind of spooked them when they were trying to get around and leave or whatever. And I didn't understand that part, and I was like, what was that even in there? It seemed like a waste of time. But then I did some research and found out that the director actually, that's how he kind of thought up the idea of making the movie, or why he wanted to do the movie, because he had something like happen to him when he was a kid in a museum. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. He put that in there because that's like his own touch to the film. So,
that kind of meant something to him.
Yeah.
Well, if you remember, they were planning on the dialogue was when they were getting off the bus, they were talking, and the one says to the other one, we'll follow along with the class for a little bit, and then we'll ditch them, and we'll ditch school and we'll go to the arcade. And the one kid's like, but the arcade's not even open right now. And he was like, yeah, well, we'll wait and then we'll go later, or something like that. So they were actually hiding out so they could get out and go to an arcade.
But that's the thing, they stayed
They stayed the entire
Yeah, I was like, I didn't understand. I could not figure that out at all. I'm like, why is this
Maybe they just got lost in time or something.
He added some unnecessary fluff in the movie. Yes,
that's one of my main detractors from the movie. I think the movie runs a little bit too long.
I think they could have cut it down about 15 minutes.
Like trim the fat, so to speak, a little bit, because the it's pretty damn long, man. And I think certain scenes they could have done without. I mean, to keep it a little bit more flowy. It kind of slowed down, and I wouldn't say came to a screeching halt at any certain point, but it slowed down the tension and the build up, till we got to the climax. So that's one of my major detractors from the movie. I just didn't understand why, I had to look it up because I was like, why is this scene even in here? Because it really served nothing to the story or anything. So I looked it up, found it out. I'm like, okay, well, this is a film that you're overseeing everything that's happening. It's your baby. I understand why you put something like that in it because it's personal to you. It's your film. I get it. That's fine. Stuff like that I understand. But at the time, I just like, why was this even in here? It served no purpose. Plot. So I was kind of confused by that. But like I said, everything else was just like you have your one character that's your slime ball. You're like, oh, I hope this guy dies. You want to see him die. He's a dick. Like, I want to see him die a horrible death. And then when he does die, which he does die, you don't even really see it. It's like, man, you want to see this guy get ripped apart. Like he's such a slime ball piece of shit. So and that's what the movie does. It builds his character up to where he's an asshole. The audience can't stand him. They want to see him get his comeuppance in the end and get massacred, so to speak. But you don't see it. It kind of shies away, and it's just like he pulls back. The creature pulls him back, and you hear a scream or whatever, and that's it. It's like, well, it would have been a little bit more satisfying if you would have saw this guy get ripped.
Yeah.
But
The
he was a slimy little bastard, though.
He was. He really was. So, what are your thoughts on the main protagonist here? I mean, I know we talk a lot about Tom Sizemore being kind of the main character, but I really feel like this movie had two main characters. One of them was Tom Sizemore. That he had Penelope Ann Miller playing Dr. Margot Green. I thought she was pretty solid. I liked the chemistry between the two. There was a lot of back and forth between them,
Yeah.
because he was dealing with what he was in his divorce and being a cop, in Chicago. God knows what he's seen, and and she's like this, just dedicated to her work, anthropologist, who's just struggling with you know, being the best at what she does and getting grants from the school to
Right.
further her studies and all. So they're like both very very dedicated to their work. The
Yeah. In
one,
high school too.
yeah,
You can kind
but it's
of
funny how they made his character very superstitious. Her character is not. Like, she does not believe in it at
No,
all.
yeah.
but then in the end, she does, because she takes his bullet and she hides it and keeps it to herself.
See, I thought that was gonna come into play too.
Hmm.
The scene. I was like, okay, well, that's pretty cool. They kind of subverted my expectations with that. Okay,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Any other movie would be like, oh, that's a important plot point. Like that's going to come into play later in the climax. They're going to use it, but
Mm.
they didn't use it.
They're gonna kill
Overall,
this chimera with a 9mm bullet.
yeah, overall, I liked her character. And again, she was pretty strong as a character. I would say the lead role definitely, besides Tom Sizemore's character as well. But yeah, like you were saying, I like the way she kind of meshes, almost like opposites attract right there. You know,
Yeah.
because where he is one way, she's completely opposite.
Yeah.
But I liked it, and I liked how she ended up using her brains to kind of, uh, defeat the monster in a sense.
I was going to
Well,
say,
she had some really good ideas. So there was the one idea where she was like, we can freeze him, and they take the thing of like, what is that? I don't even know what it's a chemical that freezes. What is it called?
Like CO2,
Yeah,
whatever.
some of that. But they take it down into which I want to bring up a point with that in a minute. But they take it down there to freeze him. They take, because obviously he's after like this fungus plant, right? So they take it down there. We've already seen what happens when something eats one of these pieces of fungus. They get overgrown. I mean, obviously this creature is this way, but the beetle, right? The beetle ate the
Yeah.
stuff. Anyway, so it's after eating this stuff.
Yeah.
And so they take it down there.
Best animatronic beetle ever, by the way.
That was pretty cool looking. Yeah.
You can see the legs go up and down when you said.
But they lowered the creature down into the cellar or whatever, or tunnels, and tried freezing him that way, which they were unsuccessful. And then
Failed miserably.
yeah, and then they run upstairs. It follows, and then it pretty much chases her into the lab, and that's when she creates this bomb, essentially. Yeah, started dumping
MacGyver, man.
all kinds of fucking liquids everywhere. Yeah,
it's
she was like MacGyver up there.
which I like that, dude, because of course, they set it up to where Tom Sizemore, like, he's like pushing her out and saying, hey, you go, I'm gonna stay here, I'm gonna do what I need to do and end this pretty much. And it flips it on you, and she's the one that's actually the hero. She's the one that actually defeats the creature on her own. She has no help. It's only her. I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, oh shit, okay. It's something you're not used to seeing. You're used to seeing like the dude come in
Female heroes in 1997?
Absolutely, dude. Like it kind of, like I said, there's a lot of surprises in this movie for me, where I was like, wow, okay, they went there. They went in that direction and not this one that we're used to seeing all the time. I applaud you for that movie. Thank you. Thank you for doing something different and unique. And they do a lot of that stuff here. So you can tell the director had a lot of say on what was going to happen. It wasn't too much of a studio interference. It was more his baby. It was his vision, and he got to see it through almost. And I kind of like that because it harkens back to like the old days in the 70s where guys like Spielberg and, De Palma and all those guys were doing stuff, and the studios were like taking a back seat. They were like, hey, these guys are filmmakers. Let's let them do their thing. And we're not fear too much. Well, it kind of reminded me of that a little bit, to where they're like, you could feel like the studio kind of backed away and let him do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And really, if you're an artist and you're creating art, you don't want anybody to hinder that. You want to see your vision on a canvas, and I could tell that's exactly what this director was able to do, much to his detriment, with people complaining about, oh, there's some scenes that are too dark. It's the lighting's off, to this, that, like I said, it's subjective. Everything's subjective. So some people hate it. Some people they find a charm to it, and it adds a lot to the movie. So it's, like I said, it can be a blessing and a curse at the same time. I think it worked here. I didn't mind the dark scenes too much. I thought it didn't bother me. I heard a lot of people saying, hey, it's a major problem. I didn't see it as really a major problem. I could still see what was going on.
Yeah.
There's not a lot that I didn't see. And I thought, it's almost like the Jaws approach with the creature. Like, don't show a lot of the creature, and when you finally see it, it makes it that much more effective. And it really worked. I mean, if you saw the creature from the minute he was in the museum until the end, it wouldn't have resonated as much for me anyway. And I'm probably,
yeah.
There was that that build up for the reveal, the same way you'd get in like a giallo or a a whodunit kind of slasher, like waiting for the end for the reveal of who it was killing everyone. Same thing with the creature features. You want that reveal for when it shows the monster. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm with you there. Like, showing the monster right off the bat is, can be less effective, especially if it's early in the movie, because then you're bored with it. Or, and then there's movies like, that's why I feel like Alien did it so well, because there was, you never knew what the creature looked like, when I mean, we do now, but like, in '79, you can imagine being in the theater watching this movie, and it's like, okay, he's this weird spider thingy in an egg. Okay, well, that's dead. What happened? Oh shit, it's popping out of his stomach.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's a tiny little creature. Then you find out this thing eats, and it gets bigger, and it gets more terrifying very quickly. So that's why I feel like it's one of the probably one of the best creature features out there because of that. This movie, I feel like, did a good job too of pacing itself before showing you the creature. So, because the whole time I'm like anxious, I'm like, I want to see this thing,
Yep.
And when it finally showed him, and he's standing up on his hind legs, I was like, that's a big son of a bitch, So,
and it pays off in a good way.
It pays off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're surprised, but you're like, okay, that was earned. That was awesome. Like, seeing the creature this way, then building up. It's almost like a build up and then a release. Like, boom, there he is. What do you think? And it's like, oh shit! Like, it's off-putting because you don't expect the creature to look like that, because it's like a Franken creature. It's like a whole bunch of different things put together, and it's like, wow. You don't see that. I didn't expect what I saw when they revealed it. I didn't expect that at all. I expected something completely different. So I can imagine with the audience sitting down in the theaters when this came out in 1997, what they thought when they saw it. It's like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, they were probably like taken back by it because of the build-up and the way it looks and everything. So it's cool, man. I dig this stuff. That's why I'm glad we're doing creature features this month. Glad we got this one and picked this one, because for a 90s creature feature, like, you don't get much cooler than this, dude. Like, this is awesome.
It's not bad. Not bad. It's good. I mean, there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
You did mention the Mimic,
Which
yeah.
It's been a while.
So, but yeah, I came into this movie. I didn't really have initially I didn't have high hopes for the movie. I really thought it was just gonna be kind of bland. I thought it was gonna be really disappointing, a lot of errors, but I enjoyed it. I really did. So, you guys ready to move to reviews?
Well, real quick, I wanted to bring up a point, and with what you were saying, Daniel, To your point, where you were really surprised about this film, I was too. And the thing is when I first like went to go look for this film, I didn't realize it was a '97 film. I thought maybe because for some reason, I was thinking that this was a film from like the late '80s or something like that. I thought it was a classic, you know, '80s monster film, and yeah, I was surprisingly blown away. I wasn't expecting that it was actually a '90s film, and it really opened my eyes a little bit because when we sit down and watch horror films, we either watch new age stuff that's like newer generation stuff, or we watch older stuff like '80s, '70s, stuff we really appreciate.
Every time.
But
Let
the
this.
'90s era, I don't really appreciate as much, because I tend to not watch them for some reason. But
Right.
this one really honed me in, and it's like this is a classic '90s horror film. I love this.
It's the curse of the floating heads, I think.
Yeah.
Because there was that period from like the mid '90s on with like Scream, which Scream's a classic. It gets shit on sometimes by people, but let's face it, that was a good damn movie. But more specifically, like Scream might have been a bad example, but I Know What You Did Last Summer, shit like that, where you had like pretty faces in the movie, and no one, like they never get hurt, like it's not as raw and as intense that you might expect.
Yeah.
And they really hold back, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cash grabs, if you will. It's like, hey, she's pretty. She has a nice rack. Let's do this, And there's just no heart and soul in them. So I think that curse kind of, it sticks with you. When you think '90s, you're like, well, damn. Like, were there any good horror movies in the '90s? And there were. You just got to look.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
There's a lot of hidden gems in there, and it's cliche, but it's true. Like, and I think the problem is, I was thinking about this the other day, and I think it was because it's almost like when a band puts out like an album and it's their debut album and it's really fucking stellar and it's great, they can never follow it up with a successor. And I think I was thinking about this the other day. The '80s is where horror peaked. Like you couldn't get, as far as practical effects, everything peaked in the '80s. So it's almost like the '90s was set up to fail. Like when the '90s started out, like it was dead. From like '90 to like '95, it was like, there's some classics in there. Don't get me wrong. Like Cemetery Man's in there, Candyman. There's some good stuff in there, but from that time period that people say horror was dead, like it was on its last legs, it was dying. And then everyone always says Scream revitalized the genre and brought it back into the fold. The mainstream audiences found a new love for it, and but really like that early '90s period, like it was on its last legs, and that's what you always hear. Like that's why people always say the '90s they're not there. They're not to the standard of like '70s horror and '80s horror, or even '60s horror for that matter. Like you can't replicate it, and I think it's honestly because it peaked on a creative and technical level in the '80s, and the '90s just kind of like fluttered, and they just couldn't follow up.
This would be an interesting topic. Maybe we do like a bonus episode on this, on '90s horror. But just pulling up this brief list here I went to Google, typed in best horror movies in the '90s, and I see one on right now. It's one of my favorites. People Under the Stairs.
Yep.
1991.
It came out.
Misery, 1990. Jacob's Ladder, Event Horizon, 1997. Arachnophobia, classic.
See, that's one from my childhood.
Yeah, there you go. Species, 95. Candyman, 92. Bram Stoker's Dracula, Sleepwalkers, In the Mouth of Madness, The Faculty. Like, there's a lot of good ones.
There really is.
Anaconda.
Like massive.
Sleepy Hollow. I personally love Sleepy Hollow. Mimic. It. House on a Hill. Cube.
Cemetery Man yet. It's one of the best.
Fucking Tremors, 1990.
Yeah, that like there it's there like, but for mainstream audiences, I don't know. It didn't resonate with them, and
Mm-mm.
or wasn't making
Right.
enough financially at that time. So
Yeah.
I
I mean, the
it's a,
'90s though, in the '90s gave birth to a lot of like, I think '90s were it was all about dramas, like action dramas, because you had movies like Shawshank Redemption and Forrest Gump. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think that stuff was just resonating more.
yeah.
Silence of the Lamb,
Yeah, I think Science of
yeah.
the Lambs catapulted that whole thing.
Wishmaster. I mean, there's so many good movies, good horror movies in the '90s. You know,
I mean, let's be honest. There's some great horror films in the '90s, but like the '80s and '70s is where it's at. Like that's the
Oh yeah,
pinnacle when we talk
hands
about
down.
yeah.
horror. That's the pinnacle. Like those 2 decades are the best decades in horror history. Like
Yeah.
for me anyway, no question. There's no question. No, like I will admit, movies from like the 2010s to like now, we're in like another renaissance because we're getting some great stuff, amazing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like movies that
Mhm.
I've watched that I'm like, boom, that's an instant classic. Boom, that's an instant classic. Like
Mhm.
right out the gate. I'm giving them
Yeah.
five-star ratings on Letterboxd, man, because I really think these movies are going to hold up well in 10, 15, 20 years from now. Like we're going to be talking about these movies like, oh shit, like that
Yeah.
was a classic.
I mean,
So
I s-
the films that are coming out now are films that we're going to sit down with our children and
and,
watch, and introduce,
and I think a lot of that is because guys that are making these films now are our age. They grew
Mm-hmm.
up on 70s and 80s horror films, like watching them in the video store era. They grew up on this stuff. It resonates with them, so they're making these films because they love the genre so much. You can tell that they love
Yeah.
the genre. They're putting their heart and soul into it, and this is the product you're getting. And it's like it's really like this is like this past decade's been like art house horror and like psychological horror and like a lot of that. Not so much
Mm-hmm.
like creature features like we're doing now or stuff like that. Like that's not really happening now. It's really these high scale like movies like Jordan Peele's doing, like, that has a lot to do with what we're going through as a society and stuff like that is resonating now. So,
Mm-hmm.
almost doing what Romero was doing, like social commentary in his films. Like that's kind of what he's got going on too. So, the history always repeats itself. And, I think we're kind of going through another renaissance, so to speak. And it's cool to be, man. It's good to be a horror film, horror film fan right now because we're getting a lot of quality stuff. And then we have the classics to always look back on, and we can always
Right.
revisit them whenever we want to. So
I see your point, and I raise you, Ice Cream Man.
I'm not a fan of that movie. I'm not a fan. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
I haven't seen it in a very long time. I don't think I remember liking it then, but I've seen it like reemerge recently, and I'm like, Clint Howard, hell yeah! And I looked up reviews, and everyone shits on this movie.
Well,
Like,
it's
how bad it
it's
is.
one of those it's one of those movies where I want to like it. I really want to love it, but I just can't. It doesn't resonate with me. Every time I watch it, it just doesn't do anything for me. And I want it to because I really want to like it. I like the premise. I like Clint Howard. I like all the stuff that it's got going for it. But something with the writing and the way the tone of the movie, like it just doesn't fit for me. I don't know.
Mm.
I want to like it though. I really do. And I'll keep watching it. I'll see one day it'll click maybe. I don't know. But
Brain Scan.
Brain Scan's great. It's
Fuck
another
yeah.
That's a classic.
about that really should be.
Yeah. I need a copy of that movie.
But that's another
Corey,
thing too, I was gonna say when we watch a movie like The Relic and you see the technology and stuff, of course it automatically dates the movie because you think about wow, like computers, technology were really in their infancy and like it's so dated and it's so this. A lot of people take that as a criticism and a negative. I don't. I think it's cool. I like to see that kind of stuff in films, like where we've come as a society with as far as our technological advances, where we are
Mm-hmm.
now. Pretty cool to see that, man. So anytime I see that in a movie, like people like say it's always a detriment. It's a negative. I don't see it as a negative at all. What were they gonna do? Go, jump into the DeLorean and go back and grab some shit and then bring it back? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, that's what they had at the time, so that's what they're gonna use.
So I mean, we do that now. I'm sure when we went back 20 years and be like, oh, that's dated. We got flip phones, and like no, like I don't see it as a criticism at all. But I know a lot of people do. But it was cool seeing them doing the research and stuff on the computers, and I just love that kind of stuff. Like old Macintosh.
Definitely.
It's cool to see, man.
Well, the other thing that I wanted to bring up before we get into ratings, and I kind of want to pick your brains on this one. I guess this would be jumping into fan theory, maybe.
I like fan theories.
So what do you think about as far as could there have ever been a sequel? And the reason why I say this, okay, so the way that these creatures come about, right? They eat this what is it, a fungus or bacteria that's on this leaf? Okay, so they eat that, and then all of a sudden they become a more modified creature, and they just grow from there. My thing is they took it down into the tunnels to lure the creature out so they could freeze him, right? And they tied it to the gate so they could lure him there so they could freeze him, and lo and behold, that was the end. That was the last time you saw those leaves. So those leaves are still down there. Now, mind you, the majority of the leaves have been burnt already. But those leaves are still down in the tunnels. So who's to say a new creature could arise?
Yeah.
Also, the leaves that didn't get taken back, that are still on that island or wherever he went.
Exactly.
Like,
could have been a sequel. I mean, there definitely could have been. I don't really know how the movie did financially in the box office. I'm not quite sure, but I know that's got a lot to do with it. Even if you have a premise for a sequel and stuff like that, if your movie's not financially successful, then they're going to scrap it before that's even brought up, which is a shame. But it's just that's the way the business is. So I see you though, man. I think they definitely could have, given the fact
looks like I had an estimated budget of $40 million, but it only made $9 million on its opening weekend, and then cumulative worldwide gross of $33 million. So they lost money on this movie.
Why? They never. That's a shame.
Sure. Yeah. I will say this, though, looking at this horror movie list from the 90s. It's 1997. Okay. Would you rather see The Relic or Alien Resurrection?
Or I think you even said the Event Horizon came out the same year as well.
Event Horizon came out in 97.
So, I mean, this is almost kind of like David Cronenberg's Rabid in Star Wars. You got Alien Resurrection come out. I mean, I could see that. I could see where somebody would go see that more so than this.
Well, yeah, because there's a history there, But,
yeah.
Love the franchise. And they want to
but sadly, they were very disappointed. You talk about, there you go. That's not bad CGI in that movie, man.
I haven't seen that movie in so long, man. It's been so long since I've seen that.
I dodge it. A movie like that, you gotta dodge it.
I typically do that, and like a movie like
Halloween Resurrection, I just skip right over them every time. I don't even bother.
It's kind of like Jaws 3.
Jaws 3. I mean, there's some movies that Texas Chainsaw Next Generation. That's another one. Like it just there's some.
Is that the one with Is that the one with Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah.
Oh, it was terrible.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's a bad movie, but it seems like a lot of franchises have that movie that you just have. Jason Goes to Hell is another one. Like I know people love it. There's some fans, but genuinely, it's like, or more or less, it's like really despised by a lot of people. So, but like I said, every movie in the world has their fans. I mean,
yeah.
You're never going to have a movie that's universally hated by everybody. So, but the majority of the fan base does not like. Those are like the redheaded stepchild It's like the redheaded stepchild syndrome. Like people just, yeah, they dog him out.
I don't know. A lot of people do not like Ice Cream Man.
I've honestly heard people that really find it great. They find it to be a real cult classic, and they keep it in high regard. And I don't know, man. I don't get it. It's just the humor doesn't work for me. The kid stuff doesn't really work for me. It's just, I don't know. But like I said, I'm I got that really cool Blu-ray, so I'm gonna keep checking it out periodically and seeing if my thoughts vary or they waver at any point. Because Clint Howard, I like Clint Howard, man. I love Evil Speak. He's in Evil Speak. I love that movie. So it's like Clint Howard does it for me. He's cool. I like him. He's quirky. He's different. He's out there, and I like his characters. But for some reason,
he has played in so many movies. It's ridiculous, man.
You look at his credits.
He's played in a lot of movies, a lot of TV credits too. He's a weird guy too. Like I was, this couple years ago, he was a guest on Steven Crowder's show, and Steven Crowder called him on Skype. This dude answers. He is in a hot tub. He was like, you got an interview live on the internet with like 1 million viewers, and you are in a hot tub.
Well, he's had another thing about him is he's had a little resurgence in his career too, where he's been in a lot of like indie stuff. So he's kind of getting back out there in the acting world and really doing a lot of cool stuff.
But you know what I love when actors do that, you know, because even like if you look at like Robert Englund will take some of the most shittiest roles just because he's in that movie, you know. I mean, look at like Zombie Strippers, you know, stuff like that, you know. I mean, it just seems like they'll take on any role just because they love the genre.
Yeah.
You know, Sid Haig was another one that used to do that. I've got some off-the-wall films that you just wouldn't even think that he would have been in.
It's almost like they got a heart too for the people making the movie, you know, because I'm sure through like connections and the community and all, they become friends, and you know, they talk and they're like, hey, I got a movie coming out, you know, I'm directing this movie, and then somehow they get roped into playing a small part of the movie, or hell, even a big part of the movie.
Yeah. Usually it's like they want them to come in for like a cameo, and then it's like, no, we want you in this scene, and then they put them in more scenes, and then before you know it, they're in the entirety of the movie. So
just killed me. This movie sucks.
The craft service table was great though, so I mean,
that's right.
Maybe that's a sell. I don't know. Like you just for films like that, you probably don't really have a good. Let's be honest. Probably don't have for craft services, but you know, like you said, man, they're probably just doing it because they love the genre. They appreciate it. The genre has given a lot to them, so they're kind of giving back. And a lot of these directors are fans, and you know, talk about how much they meant to them, and you know, growing up watching their films. So you probably see a lot of that. I mean, I'm not there, but I'm sure that happens.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
So ratings, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Corey, what do you rate this movie?
This one, like I said, because it was a '90s film, that actually, believe it or not, touched me a little bit. We won't talk about that. But yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of fun with this one, even though the CGI is what honestly killed it for me. I love the subtle comedy throughout the film. I loved all the differences between the two characters and stuff like that. And, I had a lot of fun with Tom Sizemore's character. You know, the whole thing about just constant reference to him not stepping over bodies and stuff. It's bad luck. You know, I love that. Even in the end of the film, they brought that up again. Because the cop went to go step over like the horn of the creature, and he was like, "Oh, sorry," and he walked around it. You know, I love that. I love that. So, yeah, I gave it a 4, and it just honestly, was due to some of the shitty CGI that I saw. But other than that, the concept of the film was great. The creature was awesome looking.
Hey, man, that's-
The storyline was phenomenal to me. Even some of the score I liked, and even though you don't like some of the jump scares, like the cat scene, I tend to have a little heart for some jump scares, especially if you feel like it's going to happen and then it does happen. You just kind of get a little relief there. I like that.
I didn't even get scared at that part. Like, I don't know what I was doing. I guess I was like in the middle of taking a drink or something, and it happened, and I laughed. I was like, "Ha, cat scare!" And I immediately thought of Tony. Like, he's gonna hate me.
Exactly. Yeah.
If it was good, you would have. If you're taking a drink, and if it was a good jump scare, you would have did a spit take, like and shit just blew. Whatever. But no, it was not good.
Ruined my TV.
Fucking cat scares, man. I can't stand them. It's so cliche.
So with all that being said, 4 stars for me. Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was solid. We've pretty much covered everything that needs to be covered. I thought the monster was awesome. And when you watch the creature feature, the monsters definitely got to be a number one priority. Everything else just kind of tied in well. I thought it was just a solid directed movie.
Mm-hmm.
I did give it a 3.5 star. And I feel like that maybe that's because I feel like the kills could have been better. Like there were a couple of cutaways. I know we talked about there not being many. There were a few. Like you mentioned, the one Dr. Greg, the asshole. You're just like, God, this guy needs to die. And he does, but they don't show it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they could have done a little bit more. I don't know. I feel like you're putting so much time and effort into the CGI of the creature that, like, when you get to that point where you want to see bodies get ripped apart and stuff, then you gotta deal with CGI again. It's just more work you got to put in the CGI. So I feel like maybe they were cutting corners. Apparently they already lost enough money in the box office, unfortunately, from the movie. But yeah, I feel like it's just a solid movie, product of its time, and I think it holds up well for a good solid movie night. If you want a good creature feature, get some popcorn, sit down, and watch this movie. I think it's good. I think you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So,
for me, like I said, the theme with me is like surprised. I was surprised by this. I was surprised by that. I love the little subtle humor, not in certain sections of the movie, but like I said, throughout the entirety of the movie, where it felt like it wasn't too it wasn't too top heavy, or wasn't too bottom heavy. It was like perfectly spread out throughout the whole thing. I love the setting in the museum, the scenes in the tunnels when they're in the tunnels, and it's dark and it's kind of claustrophobic a little bit. I dig that shit. I love that. That really did it for me. The creature design is absolutely amazing, dude. I think they nailed it. I love the look of him. I love that he's like a hodgepodge of a lot of different like animals, and he's even got like tufts of hair on his back, which are really fucking cool, like a nice little touch. And I don't know, there's just so much creativity, and that's what I love about creature features is the creativity. You're making something that's never been made before. Like you're designing something unique. And I really do think this monster is one of the most unique things you'll ever see, because he's just a mixture of a bunch of different stuff. So it's that shit works for me. Tom Sizemore is a fucking badass. He's like we said, the GOAT. He's awesome. I love seeing him in a movie. I wish he would have been in a little bit more, and but it would have taken away a little bit from the ending. To where I was happy that the chick was self-sufficient. She did it on her own. Her character was the badass herself. I love the gory little set pieces, and I do think the movie runs a little too long. I think it could have been shortened up, maybe about 10-15 minutes. Could have been a little trimmed down, but I don't see the dark cinematography as a big deal. Like, for me personally, it's not really a big deal, but I understand why people would say it's a criticism. I get that. For me, I gave it a 4-star. I think it's solid. I think it's one of the best creature features in the 90s for sure. You know, like I said, I haven't seen every creature feature from the '90s, but it's got to be up there for me as the ones that I have seen.
Yeah.
Like I said,
You
four
know,
stars, it's solid.
one scene we completely forgot to mention was probably one of my favorite scenes is the coroners or the
Yeah,
coroner.
Hmm.
yeah,
Like she was a fun character, and I wish they would have
she
shown her more.
she was great.
Uh,
Loved her. I loved her banter with Tom Sizemore. Like their back and forth was great.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You can really feel the closeness. Like they've been at this job for a long time. They've dealt with each other for years and years. You could feel that with their banter back and
Hmm.
forth. So it's
Yeah.
really good
Well,
setup.
I like how she asked the other coroner a question, and it's like a 2 or 3 word response, and she's like, "He never shuts up."
You never said tiny little details like that are just great. Like
Yeah,
that
that was real big, and I know a lot of '90s movies. Like the humor
Hmm.
was sleek, it was smart. It wasn't too overdone. We got to a point like from like the 2010s on where the humor just become bad shit. Like, it was all about like I'm not gonna sit here and preach about vulgarity and stuff because like sometimes I don't really don't matter. I don't mind that at all. Like, I love movies like Step Brothers. That movie's just had fantastic comedy. But then there's some
Hmm.
movies where it's like it's just this overdone and it's like this isn't funny at all. And there's so many comedy. That's why I don't like a lot of new comedies because I don't laugh at them. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is dumb. You know,
Hmm.
well,
like I'm not laughing at this movie.
what you said. It's almost like they're doing too much at one time. They're not being subtle anymore. They're just throwing
Yeah.
they're throwing a bunch at the wall and seeing what sticks. Like it's
Mhm.
not like something like Ghostbusters is a classic because the comedy in that is brilliant. And
It's
it's real
smart. It's
snarky. Yeah,
sleek.
it's smart. It's snarky. It's brilliant. So that's why
Yeah.
Ghostbusters is one of the funniest movies ever. But yeah, I agree, dude. I agree completely. I did not expect to laugh as much as I did watching the film. I did not expect it. I thought I was just going to be just a solid creature feature, which it is, like of just fucking CGI blood and this and that. That's my pre what my that's the notion I had going into it. But I was pleasantly surprised that I didn't get really any of that. I got a pretty solid creature feature with some good humor, and
Mhm.
that worked for me. So that's why I gave it a 4 star. I think it's solid. I think if you haven't seen the
Awesome.
Relic, go out there and see it because you'll be entertained.
Yep.
Definitely be entertained.
Oh,
Let's go.
one thing I wanted to bring up, and I failed to bring this up. I wanted to bring it up, but the whole scene where the creature is licking her face and stuff, he doesn't kill her right away. I wonder if there's almost like a history between those two doctors, and
Dude,
I wonder if like he maybe felt a connection with her character at that time
yeah.
because it
I
almost
thought
seemed like he wasn't going to kill her right away.
I thought so too, Corey, because when they did that and we found out that that was the guy, I was like, oh, there might be some backstory between these two characters where he had
Hmm.
secretly like was in love with her or was this
Yeah.
because that scene that it's almost like when you take it for face value, it's like why would they put that in there? But if you really think about it, they brought up the fact that that was her colleague that they
Hmm.
worked together
Hmm.
kind of made me think that something was going on, like he was harboring some feelings or he was harboring some not so pleasant feelings for her or whatever. Like I don't know. It just made you think. So I'm glad you brought that up, dude. I thought about that too when I saw that exact scene. I was like, that's kind of weird. But then I thought about it. And I was like, that could be saying a lot.
Hmm.
That can be saying a lot without saying too much.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if you guys got anything for trivia. I did want to bring up something that I did notice. As the credits were rolling, there was a name that stuck out to me. So the producer of the film is Gail Ann Hurd. Do you guys know who that is?
She
I do
Walking
not.
Dead.
Walking Dead.
Yep.
Yeah. Instantly, I was like, "Oh, holy shit, that's so awesome!"
Hmm.
Yeah,
So yeah,
she's
she's
actually if you look up her credits as being a producer, she's produced some really, really great films, man. I think she produced The Mist. I think she
oh
did that
wow,
one. Yeah, she's done a lot of good stuff.
wow.
She's had quite a career as well.
It's pretty cool.
You know, we got so heavy into the conversation, I forgot to look up trivia stuff, which is like one of my favorite things to do. And I know we don't have to go into it, you know, because we're already running kind of, you know, it's almost a 2-hour show now. But I was just reading through and I see Peter Hyam's previous film was a movie called Sudden Death, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, he was there.
And the improvised explosion, or the improvised explosive that she makes, the 2 jars, is very similar to the one that Jean-Claude Van Damme's character makes at the end of that movie. So it's like, well, we need to wrap this up. What do we do? I know, you're going to make an explosion with 2 jars.
Okay. I think he's done, correct me if I'm wrong, but 3 Van Damme movies, if I'm not mistaken. 3. I think I heard that. So he's worked with Van Damme quite a bit.
All right. He directed Outland, Time Cop. Yeah, sure enough. So Sudden Death, Time Cop, and whatever else.
I thought there was but yeah, that's pretty...
not seeing it.
I will say that I got to give her mad props for jumping in that vat of water. There's no way I could have done that. I would have been second guessing that. I would have probably died. The creature would have got me. They said that
just kill me.
They described what goes in that because he's like, oh, they're making soup, and they were like, kind of. They put the bodies in there, and it just boils everything off the bones and the whatever's left. The beetles eat, and it's like, and then she jumps in that vat to survive. Yeah, I couldn't have done that.
Man,
I don't like germs that much, so I'm good.
The shit you do to survive, you'd be surprised. Just saying.
Imagine the smell in that box.
Oh God, no!
And she closed herself in.
Yeah, God, it probably smelled like a bum's home orgy closet.
What would smell worse, that or the like all the body parts in the water in the bowels of the ship? Like,
yeah,
he even makes a reference to the smell too.
Yeah,
so you smell that, and
yeah,
they opened up. Yeah, that was nasty.
I like how it was just like a slow pan of just body parts flowing through.
Yeah, dude.
There was no cuts there. They wanted to make that point.
They made it.
Yeah.
All right. So, landing this plane?
Yep.
Let's do it.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Midnight Monster Quarter podcast. We greatly appreciate you listening and watching on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and various outlets. Just a reminder, join our Facebook group, follow us on Twitter. And this has been our review of 1997's The Relic. We will be continuing creature features this month, so be on the lookout. Our next week, do we want to spoil it now?
Yeah, we can. Let's do it.
I mean, it's probably going to get, by the time you hear this, it's probably already going to be announced on the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
But we will be reviewing John Carpenter's classic, The Thing. So, we're taking a deep dive there.
That's a heavy hit.
It's a heavy one. I'm excited about it. Because I have not watched that movie in a very long time.
There's a lot of stuff to discuss on that one, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, it might be a two-parter, huh? So, but, just a reminder, we are doing that. We will be doing our listener's choice for the third week. So we will be posted in the group and have you guys vote for, basically you make a list of movies and we do a drawing, and whoever wins, they can get a prize, and we'll review the movie they chose. So, but yeah, that's us for this week. Thank you for listening to Midnight Monster Corner podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Later, guys.
Later.